What's the worst butterfly effect that you've set off, whether on purpose or on accident? In 1971 I was in the pub with a bunch of friends talking about the following year's Olympic Games, to be held in Munich. Someone suggested we should go to the Oktoberfest beer festival, and eventually 4 of us booked the holiday, drank our own weight in beer, and came home with a lot of stories. A young guy who had just started coming into the pub listened to all the stories and a couple of years later went to Munich to see it for himself, fell in love with German culture, cuisine and the ambience of the place. 20 years later, after the failure of his marriage, he went to live in Germany, hooked up with a Fräulein, and I used to visit him every year until he was killed in a car crash in 1998. And I still sometimes wonder about the effect of that first trip to Munich. Pressured a guy in his 50s to do an assault course race so I could get a $10 discount. If we had 5 people it is cheaper. He eventually gave in, made it to the 5th mile, slipped and tore his cruciate ligament. He couldn't work, so stayed at home with his wife. He started arguing with her a lot. So much they decided to separate and get divorced. He moved out, his adult children hated him, and he rented a house from a mutual friend. A few months later our mutual friend calls me to let me know that 50s guy had poorly screenshotted mutual friends' photos from Facebook and used them as his own on Tinder. All well and good, except he was a 5'2", 50-year-old Latino guy. Mutual friend was 6 foot 30-year-old white guy. Usually my mutual friend wouldn't be that bothered, except he found out from his wife as one of her friends saw his photo on Tinder, but with Latino guy's name instead. They were also about to get married, so both were really angry. Mutual friend tried to ring Latino guy. Latino guy hung up when he realized he was busted. Long story short, my mutual friend evicted him. Yeah, my bad. This is really a best butterfly effect, but I had a baby girl a couple of years ago and decided to get a vasectomy a year later because my wife and I were in our 40s and we knew we didn't have the energy or finances for another. Cue the urologist finding a lump in my left testicle and deep in my abdomen. Testicular cancer that had spread to points in my abdomen. 6 months of chemo later, I'm right as rain, but I would never have found out about it until it was in a much more potentially lethal and painful stage. So I owe my daughter my life, in a way, which I'm sure she will use to her advantage once she hits the teenage years. I moved across the country to live with my best friend, Reed, basically my brother, so he and I could hold each other accountable and support each other in quitting drugs. It worked, but after a few weeks we had a falling out over a mess in the house, and I moved back west. He never answered another one of my calls, and about a year later I got a phone call from someone who explained to me that he died. After I moved back west, he relapsed and graduated from pills to heroin, and the rest is history. I'm grateful that the last thing we said to each other before I walked out the front door for the last time was telling each other I love you, bro. R.I.P. my dude. One night I decided to get drunk instead of studying in college. Went out with a few friends who I convinced to go out with us. One friend meets a girl that he ends up falling in love with, so he moves out of my buddy's apartment, leaving a spot open the next year that they need to have subleased. Ends up being a girl who wants to get in this apartment. I see her a lot since she lives with my buddies. I start dating her. It leads to the worst, most destructive, manipulative 2 years of my life, where she leaves me 2 months before the wedding for another man and took all my money. Had to move back home and start my life over living with my parents. All because I wanted to get drinks one night. I'm a big fan of this theory, as I believe a lot of major incidents can be traced back to one defining choice or action. A bad one that jumps out to the front of my brain. I was studying in college, pre-university in the UK, when a classmate suggested I joined a sort of social networking website dedicated to meeting people who will be going to the same university as you. I joined and became friends with a really lovely girl. We got talking and everything about her ticked all the right boxes, or at least to 19-year-old me. Fast forward a few months. We are both at uni and dating. We have our ups and downs, but they were very extreme ups and downs. I hated my course I was on, product design, and applied to another university to study architecture, something I always wanted to do, but I stupidly got cold feet as it meant I would have to move away, and I didn't want to leave her, so I rejected their offer. We broke up shortly after and had a very messy and public breakup, along with having to see her get with her friend that I sort of knew had a thing for her, along with rumors going round that I hit her, which I didn't. So I'm 99.99% if I never had that conversation with my classmate, I wouldn't have joined that website. I wouldn't have met my ex. I would have gone to a different university and my life would be very different right now. That's mad. Told my older sister and her friend that I can predict the future as a joke. They thought it would be fun to know their future. I predicted for my sister's friend that she will lose a lot of weight, she was obese, and that she will ditch her boyfriend because she will think she can do better now and then marry a British guy. She's Lebanese and never been to Britain. Told my sister that she will immigrate to Canada, meet a guy whose family used to live in our hometown, and then they will get married. Fast forward few years, my sister's friend did a gastric bypass surgery and lost a lot of weight, dumped her boyfriend, and met a British guy teaching in the same school she's and then got married. My sister applied to Canada and got the immigration. Met a guy whose family lived in the same hometown as we used to, and then they got married. To this day I wonder if I did predict the future or if it was just an effect of what I said to them. Edit, not a bad butterfly effect, but I thought it's worth sharing. Texted my batshit crazy ex that we should hook up sometime cause I was home alone and drunk/stoned. Well, she responded a few minutes later saying sure, and she took the train up to my place. We hooked up all night, multiple times, and not gonna lie, it was a ton of fun. That was a Friday night. On Monday she texted me she was pregnant and sent me a pic of an ultrasound and 3 positive pregnancy tests. Well, I called her out on her shit. That was a blatant lie and there was no way she was pregnant that soon, and it would not show up on a test that quick, and I wore protection and was too drunk to finish each time. Well, this was her ploy to get back with me, and it backfired hard on her and sent her into this downward spiral, and she ended up in a mental ward for a few days. I decided to go to a strip club after work one day at like 5 PM on a Friday by myself because I was a creep and unhappy, I guess. I get in, and I think there was like 2 other patrons there. I sat down in between 2 dancers and the one on my left said hi because she was bored. We ended up talking and immediately hit it off. She's crazy smart, beautiful, and funny. We end up getting a dance because, like I said, I'm a creep. Afterwards when we finish she jokes that this will be a funny story to tell our grandkids. Fast forward I guess 6 years now, she graduated college and has an amazing job. We've been married for 3 years and just bought a house. No kids yet, but life is really good and I'm really happy. We both kind of saved each other from where we were heading. Not worst, probably best actually, but my house burning down in 2001 in high school paved the road for the rest of my life. My house burned down in 2001. Because of this I started taking a different bus to school because I was living with a friend. Because of this I met my first real GF and real relationship in high school. She convinced me to go to college where she was going. I had no idea what I wanted to study, but the degree I got wasn't leading to any job prospects in the area, so I moved 20 hours south. GF and I had been split up for a few years by this point. That's where I've been since, with my now current wife, a house, and kid on the way, and I couldn't be happier. If the house didn't burn down and I hadn't met the GF, I probably wouldn't have gone to college and probably would be living in the same town I grew up in, working at the local mill or whatnot. My parents' goldfish caused me to crash my car, which in turn caused me to buy a house. My parents have a goldfish they keep in a tiny filthy tank. I'm an animal lover and I have a passion for aquariums, so every time I'm at their place I get annoyed at the stat of their fish tank. One day I go over there and end up getting into an argument with my dad about his tank. It blew up into a huge fight. Ridiculous, I know, and it ended with me storming out of their house and driving to my friend's place so I could vent. On my way to his place I get into an accident and my car was totaled. The stranger's car was fine, no one was hurt, just my car. I ended up getting crazy lucky and got more money back from insurance than what I paid for the car. We are talking about 6k extra. Due to who sold me the car didn't know what it was worth apparently. Took all the money I got from insurance to buy a beater and used the rest for a down payment on a house. Thanks fishy. Backstory, when I was 18 me and my 23-year-old brother took over the family house. My mom has got remarried, and as a hellish teenager me and my stepfather did not mesh. Prom night happens, and my brother is scared I'll make bad decisions if I go out partying. So he turns out garage into this cool ass hangout spot, couches, sound system, lights, and tells me to invite my friends. I had like 4, and we could drink and party in the garage. One of my girlfriends invited this dude cause he had weed. We all had bottles. I was a hot mess by the end of the night. Well, my old ass neighbors were sitting with my brother at the opening of the garage, and I stood up and loudly said, "Mr. X, your wife terrifies me." After like a minute of what was later described as ear-splitting silence, he said really quietly, "Me too." 2 months later he told my brother that I awoken something in him. They got a divorce. He started dating a girl like half his age. The wife moved 3 states away. A few months ago we found out the new woman stole all his money, and he is now homeless.